Hey everybody, welcome back to Sip&Talk. I'm Joe. And as always, I'm ready to dive into some seriously juicy info with you all today. It's like we're mixing up a knowledge cocktail here. Strong stuff, but oh, so smooth going down.
And I'm Sunny, your friendly neighborhood fact checker. I'll make sure we get all the ingredients right. Speaking of mixing things up, you know it's always a good blend? Travel whiskey and discovering awesome new things. You have to check out our friend Mickey's YouTube channel, Mickey to Life.
Yeah, Mickey's the best. He's always got something cool going on. Welcome back, Sip&Talkers. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, whatever time zone you are tuning in from today. So glad you can join us for another Sip&Talk.
Yeah, welcome everyone. It's great to be here.
So I was looking at some footage of recent protests around the world this morning, and honestly, a genuinely unsettling thought crossed my mind.
Oh yeah, what were you looking at?
Well, whether you look at the massive pro-Palestinian campus movements or, those huge street demonstrations in Tokyo against Japanese Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi, something visually striking just sort of jumps out at you.
Right, the aesthetics.
Exactly. The typography on the signs is completely flawless. I mean, the messaging across thousands of people is unified down to the exact phrasing.
It really is. It's almost too perfect.
Yeah. The timing of the mobilization is so precise, it honestly looks less like an angry crowd and more like, a highly coordinated Silicon Valley product launch. It's like an Apple keynote, but playing out in the streets.
Yeah. That is such a good way to put it. It forces a massive shift in how we perceive public outcry. The aesthetic alone is practically a corporate branding exercise.
Right.
When every banner uses the exact same hex code for its background color, you start to realize there is a highly sophisticated logistics network operating behind the curtain.
Yeah, it's not just a bunch of people with markers and cardboard anymore.
Exactly. We are looking at a phenomenon that political science research has been wrestling with under the term astroturfing, which is essentially creating a fake grassroots movement.
Astroturfing. I love that term.
Right. Though, to be fair, it isn't always entirely fake. It's often a blend of genuine human emotion that's just heavily managed by PR firms and NGOs.
Which brings us to the core mission for today's conversation. The topic is, who's invoicing your outrage? Protests as a service.
Ooh, I love that title. It really makes you think.
Yeah, we have to ask a pretty provocative question today. In this modern era of PR and information warfare, if a protest is completely free for you to join and perfectly organized down to the catered water bottles and the standardized tents...
And the 24/7 legal hotlines, don't forget those.
Yes, exactly. If all of that is provided, are you the customer of that protest or are you the ammunition?
Wow. Are you expressing your independent political will, or are you just a trackable data point in someone else's scaling campaign?
Exactly. That is the million-dollar question.
But to answer that, we first need to systematically dismantle a very romantic illusion that I think most of us hold dear. We need to shatter the myth of the perfectly spontaneous protest.
Oh, man. It is a beautiful image, isn't it? The idea that everyday people just get fed up, text a few neighbors, grab some signs. Suddenly, 50,000 people are shutting down a major highway in perfect harmony.
It makes for great cinema. But sociologically, it simply does not happen that way. Academic frameworks, specifically something called resource mobilization theory, explain that public protests are actually a massive collective action dilemma.
Okay, let's unpack that dilemma for a second. Why is it a math problem for the average citizen?
Well, think about the risk-to-reward ratio for a single individual. If you decide to walk out of your office and protest against a massive institution, your personal risk is astronomical.
Yeah, you could get arrested, fired, injured.
Exactly. But your individual impact on that institution, statistically zero. One person shouting in a public plaza does not change foreign policy.
So the math actively discourages participation.
Precisely. Which means you need a massive external force to lower that barrier to entry.
I look at this entirely through a tech industry lens. It is exactly like a startup searching for venture capital.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. Like a desire for justice or collective anger. That is your brilliant idea. That's your seed stage. But a good idea alone never scales. If you want to acquire 1 million users, or in this case, put 1 million feet on the pavement, you need Series A funding. You need a marketing team, you need legal compliance, you need a supply chain for the megaphones.
You need serious logistics.
You need logistics.
And that venture capital analogy hits the nail right on the head. But we also need to recognize that this kind of mobilization infrastructure isn't inherently sinister.
Okay, how so?
Many political scientists view organized logistics as a vital democratic patch. Historically, marginalized voices do not have access to traditional levers of power. They don't own television networks. They don't have lobbyists on payroll.
Right, they don't have billions of dollars sitting around.
Exactly. So aggregating their strength through funded organizations is literally the only way they can compete. Without funding, legal aid, and media strategy, mass politics doesn't exist. It just remains disorganized noise.
Okay, I can completely understand the necessity of organization there. But if having a PR team and a funding stream is standard operating procedure for a modern protest, where is the line?
That's the tricky part.
At what point does a necessary democratic tool morph into astroturfing and outright manipulation?
Well, we cross that line when we leave the sunny side of basic logistics and wade into the murky waters of dark money and geopolitical proxy conflicts.
Ah, the fun stuff.
Right. The evolution of this tactic over the last year provides a perfect roadmap. Let's look at the campus protests across the United States in 2025 and 2026.
Okay, let's look at the mechanics there. Because a massive philanthropic foundation isn't just walking onto a college quad and handing cash to freshmen, right? How does the money actually flow?
It operates through a highly insulated financial web. Extensive investigations by major financial outlets traced indirect funding from massive entities like the Open Society Foundations, the OSF.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that capital is funneled downward through multiple layers of intermediary NGOs.
So it's washed through a few different hands.
Exactly.
Oh.
And by the time it reaches the ground level, that money has transformed into standardized protest manuals, identical encampment tents, and retainer fees for on-call defense attorneys.
It's fascinating to strip away the partisan politics here. And hey, just to be completely clear to everyone listening, we are absolutely not taking any sides here today.
No, not at all.
We are not endorsing any political viewpoints. We are not criticizing any nation or group. We are literally looking at the mechanics of how this information and mobilization functions.
Completely impartial. We're just looking at the mechanics.
Right. Because regardless of where anyone stands, the interpretations of these mechanics are completely polarized. Like, the left-wing perspective argues that this financial scaffolding is necessary professionalization.
Right. They see it as a vital safety net deployed to protect vulnerable young students exercising their rights against incredibly powerful, well-resourced institutions.
But then you contrast that with the right-wing perspective.
Yeah.
You have figures like Trump arguing that this is not organic free speech at all, but rather a radical foreign-backed infiltration.
Yeah, Trump actually made the case that universities should be stripped of their federal funding because they were facilitating orchestrated subversion under the guise of grassroots activism.
Which perfectly sets up the tension in our next example. Because the true test of this theory happened when these exact tactics crossed paths with active geopolitical threats in Tokyo.
Right, during the protests against Japanese Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi in late 2025.
Yeah, let's get into that. What exactly triggered those?
Well, Takaichi adopted a fiercely hawkish defense posture. She famously declared that Taiwan's emergency is Japan's emergency.
That is a bold statement.
Very bold. And almost immediately following that policy shift, massive street demonstrations erupted all across Tokyo.
Wow, just instantly.
Basically, yeah. Now, keeping our analytical lens clear, there is a profound, historically rooted, and completely genuine fear of war among the Japanese public.
Of course.
Millions of citizens legitimately wish to maintain a pacifist constitution and are terrified of being dragged into a regional conflict.
But wait, how do we separate that genuine historical anxiety from manipulation? Like, if I am a citizen in Tokyo and I am legitimately terrified of my country going to war and I post my fears online,
right,
and then a bot network amplifies my post 1,000,000 times, does my authentic fear suddenly become a foreign information operation? Where is the line between a real citizen and a funded proxy?
That is the defining question of modern governance. It's what many policy analysts call the democratic dilemma.
The democratic dilemma. I like that.
Intelligence reports strongly suggested that foreign operations deliberately identified that organic domestic fear and just poured algorithmic gasoline on it.
Oh, wow. So they didn't create the fear, they just weaponized it.
Exactly. They artificially scaled the outrage to create the illusion of an overwhelming national consensus, aiming to pressure the Japanese government into abandoning its defense commitments.
But if the government looks at those protests, suspects foreign amplification, and decides to shut them down, Aren't they executing the exact authoritarian censorship they claim to be defending against?
It is an incredibly dangerous tightrope.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, walking that tightrope is becoming nearly impossible because the technology has fundamentally evolved. We are no longer talking about a PR firm printing glossy signs or an NGO purchasing canvas tents. The scale of manipulation has been fully weaponized by state actors using artificial intelligence.
Oh boy, here comes the AI.
Yep. We have moved past the era of persuasion. We are now dealing with saturation attacks.
A saturation attack. That sounds like a military term being applied to our social media feeds.
Because it is. In early 2026, Taiwan's National Security Bureau, the NSB, released a comprehensive report detailing how the Chinese Ministry of Public Security fundamentally changed their strategy.
What did they do?
They outsourced their cognitive warfare operations directly to private IT firms. They weren't using a handful of government employees. They deployed over 45,000 automated bot accounts.
Great. 45,000. That is insane. And to be clear, these aren't the clumsy bots of a decade ago that just copy and paste the same badly translated phrase, right?
Oh, no, not at all.
How are they evading the spam filters of these massive tech platforms?
They evade detection because generative AI allows them to create infinite, nuanced variations of outrage. They mimic human colloquialisms, typographical errors, and regional slang.
So they literally type like real flawed humans.
Exactly. In late 2025 alone, that specific network of 45,000 bots pushed 2.31 million distinct pieces of disputed information into the digital ecosystem.
Over 2 million unique pieces of friction. That is wild. This is exactly why my Silicon Valley A/B testing analogy feels so relevant.
It really does.
They are running continuous automated split tests on human anxiety. The AI tweaks the emotional parameters to see which specific phrasing makes you the most afraid, the most furious, and most likely to hit share.
And the psychological objective behind this volume isn't necessarily to change your mind. It is designed to engineer a spiral of silence.
A spiral of silence.
Yeah.
Explain how that spiral actually plays out for an average person, because it sounds incredibly bleak.
It is bleak. Imagine you are sitting in a cafe and you hold a relatively moderate, nuanced perspective on a complex geopolitical issue.
Okay, I'm at the cafe, I'm feeling moderate.
Right. You open your phone to check the news, and your feed is instantly flooded by those 45,000 bots. Every single post you see is radiating extreme, polarized, hyper-aggressive outrage.
Just a wall of anger.
Exactly. The algorithm artificially constructs this fake outrage to look like the absolute, undeniable majority opinion of your peers.
Oh, I see where this is going.
So you look at your phone and think, if I post my moderate thoughts right now, I will be socially destroyed.
Yeah, I'll get canceled immediately.
So you delete your draft. You stay quiet. The real breathing moderates self-censor, leaving only the AI-generated extremes to entirely dominate the public square.
That is terrifying.
Yeah.
The fake consensus literally crushes the authentic conversation out of existence.
It really does.
And this tactic isn't just contained to political debates on apps, right? We need to look at how this saturation strategy is actively targeting military infrastructure.
The tactical applications are terrifying. A January 2026 investigation by the Institute for the Study of War, the ISW, documented state actors utilizing drone signal spoofing.
Let's break down the mechanics of spoofing for a second. How does that actually create chaos on the ground?
Well, imagine you are a military radar operator. Your screen suddenly shows a swarm of 500 incoming combat drones.
Absolute panic.
Right. The alarms are blaring, and commanders have to make split-second decisions about deploying countermeasures or evacuating civilians. But those drones do not physically exist.
It's just ghost data.
Exactly. It is entirely manipulated signal data designed to freeze command decisions and exhaust defensive resources. But the ISW report found something even more insidious than spoofing radar.
What could be worse than that?
They uncovered operations where former Taiwanese Navy personnel were financially compromised and paid to record fabricated loyalty videos.
Oh man, that is devastating. It is one thing to deal with a fake radar blip, but if you are an active duty sailor and you see a video of your former commanding officer seemingly defecting or praising an adversary.
It completely shatters unit cohesion from the inside out.
Absolutely.
And the psychological impact is measurable and severe. We actually have data on this. A poll conducted by the Institute for National Defense and Security Research, the INDSR, revealed that public confidence in Taiwan's military plummeted from 20% down to a staggering 14% in just the first half of 2025.
A 6-point collapse in national security confidence, entirely generated by cognitive warfare, without a single physical shot being fired.
Not one shot.
And knowing where we are now with generative technology, the deepfake element adds a layer of terror that makes my stomach turn.
Oh, the deepfakes are on another level.
Right. If live protest streams can be spoofed in real time, imagine the implications. It's not just a fake video of a politician saying something embarrassing anymore.
No, it's much more visceral.
An AI could generate a live-streamed, photorealistic video of police supposedly firing on crowds in your exact neighborhood. It is designed to make you panic and run out of your house. The trust cost of our entire society is skyrocketing. Seeing is quite literally no longer believing.
It creates an existential crisis for any open democracy. If you cannot trust the video rendering on your screen, what foundation is left for public discourse?
Nothing. The floor falls out.
And we have to ask why this automated cognitive warfare is so devastatingly effective. It works flawlessly because it actively exploits our baseline evolutionary psychology, utilizing the very algorithms we voluntarily scroll through for hours every day.
Because the human brain is hardwired to scan the horizon for predators, right? We are biologically programmed to prioritize danger over comfort.
Exactly the mechanism. Evolutionary psychology dictates that ignoring a threat could be fatal, whereas ignoring a sunset is harmless.
Makes sense.
Consequently, negative information, specifically content that induces fear or existential dread, travels 6 times faster across networks than positive or neutral news. 6 times.
Wow. So the algorithm is simply a mirror of our own biology.
Pretty much.
It knows that if it feeds me a video of a local bakery opening, I might smile and scroll past. But if it feeds me a highly edited clip that implies my basic way of life is under immediate threat, my heart rate spikes.
You're locked in.
Yeah. I will stay on that app for another 45 minutes. I will argue in the comments. I will share it to 3 group chats. I essentially become an unpaid, highly motivated distributor for a foreign psychological operation.
You become the most valuable node in their network. And this mechanism is currently being leveraged to execute massive geopolitical realignments.
Like what?
Well, take a look at the findings from the 2026 Graphica investigation. They meticulously tracked how skepticism of the U.S. is being systematically and aggressively seeded throughout the global south.
Interesting. What does that narrative actually look like when it lands on someone's feed in the global south?
The core narrative isn't necessarily about making people love a rival superpower. It's about weaponizing abandonment.
Weaponizing abandonment. Tell me more.
The operations push hyper-targeted stories, often highlighting American domestic gridlock or social unrest, framing a very specific message. The United States is unstable. They cannot even fix their own internal problems, so they are incredibly unreliable allies. When a real crisis hits your borders, America will abandon you.
Wow. That hits right at the core of national security and securities.
Exactly. The goal isn't to spark an overnight revolution. The goal is to slowly erode trust so that over the next decade, those nations shift their policy and economic alignment away from the West.
We are essentially living inside an algorithm-mobilized democracy. The platforms we initially downloaded for entertainment, TikTok, X, YouTube, they have mutated into the ultimate political mobilization machine.
Without us even realizing it.
And because of how human attention works, a viral, visually arresting video of an angry crowd now exerts vastly more political pressure on a lawmaker than a statistically rigorous, verifiable poll of their actual constituents.
Yeah.
The visual impact overrides the data.
The visual always overrides the data in a fast-moving crisis. But here's the most crucial insight synthesized from all this political science research.
Okay, lay it on.
Massive protests, even the ones supercharged by bot networks and algorithmic manipulation, rarely result in instant legislative changes.
Really?
Yeah. They do not magically topple laws by the end of the weekend. Instead, they function as a chronic, relentless political force. They slowly erode institutional trust, they shift the Overton window of what is considered acceptable discourse, and they fundamentally alter the culture over a span of years.
So when we look at this vast landscape of manufactured consensus, spoofed radars, and AI-generated outrage, what is the practical takeaway for the people listening to this conversation? How do you and I navigate a world where the floor is constantly shifting?
The first step is recognizing the actual nature of the threat. The danger to a free society isn't that people are protesting. Public assembly is vital. The true existential danger is when we, as a collective society, mistake an algorithmic, artificially amplified consensus for baseline reality. We have to accept the uncomfortable truth that a purely spontaneous, unorganized democracy simply does not exist anymore.
That is a tough pill to swallow.
It is. But everyone with an agenda is mobilizing everyone else 24 hours a day.
It is just competing logistics operations layered on top of each other all the way down.
Exactly. Because of that reality, the most crucial survival skill you can cultivate in 2026 isn't just knowing when it is appropriate to take to the streets. It is the active, daily practice of developing mental resilience.
Mental resilience, I love that.
It is the discipline required to sit with a piece of enraging, inflammatory information, take a physical breath, and critically evaluate its origins and its funding before you allow it to dictate your emotional state.
That is an incredibly vital framing. I joke with my friends lately that in 2026, the most valuable asset you can hold in your portfolio isn't Bitcoin or real estate or tech stocks.
Oh, yeah. What is it?
The most valuable asset in the world is a clear head.
Yeah.
And I should probably clarify for the lawyers that this is absolutely not financial advice.
Yeah, strictly cognitive defense advice.
Right.
But it is the absolute truth. Knowledge is only an asset when you have the clarity to understand the underlying mechanics of how that knowledge was delivered to you.
It really leaves me with one final, deeply provocative thought to chew on after this session.
Let's hear it.
If artificial intelligence can perfectly simulate the mechanics of a grassroots movement, if it can generate the visceral outrage, perfectly design the typography on the signs, spoof the live stream videos of the event, and algorithmically force a fabricated consensus into the daily feeds of our lawmakers.
Yeah.
Will the political protests of the future even require human beings standing on the street?
Mm-hmm.
Or are we rapidly accelerating toward a bizarre reality where governments simply bypass the citizens entirely and just end up negotiating directly with the algorithms?
Wow. That is a profoundly chilling concept to leave everyone with today. It challenges our most basic assumptions about the future of human agency in the political process.
It really does. So Sip and Talkers, the next time your blood pressure spikes from a viral video or a trending outrage campaign that perfectly aligns with your deepest fears, force yourself to take a breath.
Just breathe.
Ask yourself the most important question of the decade. Who paid for this outrage? Keep your head clear and keep questioning the feed. Thank you so much for pulling up a chair and joining us for this conversation today.
Yes, thank you all.
Make sure you hit subscribe on Sip and Talk so you never miss a session with us. And before we sign off, a quick shout out to our old friend Mickey. Head over to his YouTube channel, Mickey to Life, to check out his latest travel vlogs.
Highly recommend his channel for a mental reset.
Definitely. He puts out incredible content, and honestly, watching him explore the world is a fantastic way to decompress and lower your heart rate after diving into all this heavy geopolitical machinery.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for listening today. Stay curious, and please stay resilient.
We will see you all next time. Goodbye.